In the last few days, while we've had a young climate activist, Disha Ravi, arrested for her alleged links or involvement in a toolkit, we've had another toolkit emerge. Now, this new toolkit actually illustrates how hate is weaponized and how fake content is created by thousands of people and spread to lakhs of people. This is the story of how a Telegram group consisting of thousands of people is being used, and that's the focus on Media Buddhi this week. Hi, I'm HR Venkatesh. In order to explore this issue of how hate is weaponized, I spoke to Meghnad S. He's the journalist who broke the story. He's from News Laundry and he broke the story of this Telegram group. And he spoke at length with me about how this group operates and what is the meaning of all this.
It was a curiosity exercise. It began with that 2 months ago, or in November, when Kapil Mishra put out this form publicly saying, join the Hindu ecosystem, right? It had like normal details like name, address, mobile number, etc. But there was this one very intriguing question, which is like special interest, and in brackets they had written Gauraksha and Love Jihad and etc. Some interesting Gau Seva. So we were like, this is interesting. And we made up fake names and kind of applied. So I didn't get in initially. Once I got in, then I got rejected. But some of the people who had applied also got in, and then they added me as well. So yeah, that's how it started. But then later, what began as an exercise of curiosity became like a very interesting exercise also in observing how Kapil Mishra's whole sort of, how do I say it, factory operates. They started off by promoting the RSS magazines Panchajanya and Organizer. Later they moved on to like trending hashtags. Then they moved on to other things, and then they started creating narratives. Then we were suddenly added to 3 more groups. So the main Hindu ecosystem group, which is 20,000 people, only admins can post there, meaning Kapil Mishra can post there and a few other group admins can post there. But in the other groups, there were you could post anything, anybody can post. So we saw like people coming up with forwards, we saw people sharing documents, we saw people sharing posts and images and about whatever is happening on the side, like farmers protest or something about the Delhi riots or like related events which they wanted to affect the narrative for. So yeah, that is what we saw. And of course, they had a weekly activity to trend something on Twitter related to Hindu greatness and Hindutva, essentially.
Yes, I mean, typically, Meghnad, when a reporter investigates anything, the reporter is not usually relies on a source. But in this case, you're both the reporter and the source, and you were there yourself. And what efforts did you take to verify the accuracy of this investigation?
Actually, this is a very valid question, right? Because initially, we were even in a doubt whether we want to do this story, right? For instance, if this group was sharing, say, translated versions of Bhagavad Gita, right? Which they did. If they were sharing like Ramayana or Mahabharata or books about Hinduism or saints and thoughts of saints, which they also did, right? But what they also started sharing were these documents which were titled Sikh terrorism, right? You know, with 500 words, 500 posts in it, a compilation of shareable posts which were outrightly dangerous, right? You know, they were projecting Sikhs as terrorists and then as a bonus Muslims as well, right? Then we saw that they were sharing these mass tweet links where you could click on a link and then you could create a trending hashtag which was pre-decided, the time was pre-decided. And there were hundreds of this, right? And they were all shareable, meaning they were very little text, very visual in nature, and they have a clear, dangerous, agenda-driven message here. Then we saw fake videos being circulated, right? So we saw that some of the videos which say an alt news or a boom would fact check, we would see them first there, right? Which would end up there. Then we would see, like, as you are seeing Mia Khalifa posts or Greta posts or whatever else. So whatever was the event happening from November till now, We saw like alternate versions being created, content being created, and members were actively being told to create content. And then these compilations were done. Another thing we saw was this entire state-wise list of masjids, right, which were apparently quote unquote built on temples which were destroyed. That does raise some alarms, right? Because that you can see that there are 33,000 people in this group. You can see on Telegram how many people see it, right? You can see like
Yes.
10,000 people have seen this message. So, I mean, even if like 500 of those downloaded like that Sikh document, you can imagine if they shared it in 5 WhatsApp groups, those 500 people, even if they shared like 1 or 2 posts, you can imagine the kind of damage that would cause, because it would just get infinitely transmitted to family groups.
Yeah, I want to
And
clarify
that is
something.
dangerous.
I want to ask a clarificatory question, which is this is stuff that is essentially made up, right? I mean, you might use a few facts here and there, but it's essentially made up or interpreted in a really dangerous way or,
Yeah.
a mishmash. So this is typically how misinformation works. And you
Yeah.
are there to see how it takes root and kind of spreads.
So Shambhavi, my co-author, she was there when she was observing all these things happen in real time, right? So, and it's very traumatizing, right? Because you can see, as a news organization, you're doing reports on one end, and she was designing the artwork for it, by the way. So she knew what the story was, and you see this alternate reality being created on this group at the same time, like Hindu riots or whatever, like human rights for Hindus or whatever else, right? Farmers protest was a big thing because that 26th event that happened, like the violence that happened at Red Fort, and what followed after that, the misinformation that was coming up. From the outside, when you were looking at it, it seemed like, oh my God, this is endless. Like, how many things are we supposed to fact check? And when you were inside, you were actually the ones who were seeing that being created, right? And constantly videos being shared, that whole edited clip of that person being beaten, and that whole Rahul Gandhi thing that happened, that was also shared there. So Shambhavi also saw that happen. And then I also like reviewed it later, because I was not keeping a constant watch on it. She was watching it real time. I came back and then I looked at it in total, because we were like, she might miss something or she might do this. So I will come back later and I will review whatever she has seen. I will sort it out, and then we would together write the story. And of course, she would do the illustrations as well.
Yes. So just for the public, there are two people who had their eyes on this story, and both of
Yeah.
you worked on it together, and it must have gone through an editing process also.
Yes,
Can you
yes.
tell us
So
what this
it
editing
went
process is
through,
like?
right. So absolutely. So like we had to pitch the story. So first we just, as I said, we entered as a curiosity exercise. We didn't even know if there was a story. But then when we saw that there is a story, we actively started working on it. And then of course our managing editor had to take a call on what all we can include. And he strictly told us that, do not mention any real people, right? For instance, you don't know if they are real. So, for instance, if on a Telegram group, because we had fake names, uh, everybody else might have fake names too. So, we should not sort of assume things. We were also told not to sort of use triggering material, right? Specifically. So, we gave some examples of how this was, but it was very bad. Like inside, the language that was used was very crass. The kind of things that were said about people were extremely dangerous, and we didn't include any of that in the story, because again, insinuations, and plus that we didn't think added anything to the story per se. Plus, of course, there was another fact-checking process where our desk editor Mehraj went through it. He added and removed things. He asked like 1,000 questions to us about how did you get this? Why does the screenshot not have the group name? Right? So the screenshot should have the group name so that it's not construed as something else. Plus, he also like asked us a bunch of questions about the documents that were shared, like the Sikh terror documents or the other documents, and he saw them and then he verified them, and then he was like, yeah, this is worth putting into the story. And then, we obviously published it.
And we've been playing screen grabs of this story
Yeah.
on this conversation as well, so people can see those graphics that Shambhavi created and some of the
Yes.
tweets as well. How did you authenticate that it was Kapil Mishra, his authenticity? I
Hmm.
mean, I think your starting point was clearly that it was his tweet and it came from his Twitter handle.
Yes. So the first message we saw was from Kapil Mishra, right? Because he himself came on the group and put up a video. The first video that was put up on, I think, 27th November was about we have to run a campaign to get more people to join the Hindu ecosystem, and how he was saying that we have so many people who have filled the form. There are so many people on the ground. Um, we are doing great, right? And he had a logo of Hindu ecosystem behind him also, if you noticed, and then a hashtag 27th November with the hashtag that they were using. So it was very clear that it was meant for this group, it was edited for this group. So, and then he kept doing that, like he did a multiple messages like those. So we knew that it's either him himself, because it was his face, he was talking, or someone from his office or his team or someone doing it. So, for instance, we saw videos of Prakash Javadekar being shared, but we couldn't say that Prakash Javadekar was there, right? Because it was not posted by Prakash Javadekar or an account that said Prakash Javadekar, or he didn't have a Hindutva logo behind him or like a Hindu ecosystem or anything. He was just promoting the magazine, and which can be a video from anywhere. So we didn't claim that this was made for that group, right? But the Kapil Mishra video was definitely made for that group because it was being addressed to the members.
There's something else I want to talk about for journalists, and we at Boomline, we are also familiar with this. These stories are not easy stories to report on.
It is our literal job to tell people that what is ad funded media doing, right? And that kind of also has expanded to include narratives being created on social media, right? Because social media ends up becoming news, and that happens every day. So we have seen like manufactured trends being made. Like we can copy paste a certain phrase on Twitter, and you will see like thousands of tweets with that, right? So we can see that they are being copy pasted. Probably this was the first time I saw it happening and being created myself, where the links were shared, and then if you click on it, it would just redirect you to Twitter, and your tweet would be there, and you just have to click tweet, and then you can do it 1,000 times over with different accounts. So it was very fascinating to watch as well. Uh, and if I was fascinated, and if Shambhavi was fascinated, and if other people we were showing it to were fascinated, we thought there's a story there, because we haven't seen it. So I guess nobody has seen it. So I guess it would be interesting to put it together as a curiosity exercise, but also as an information exercise, because ultimately these are 33,000 people who might be spreading it to 30 lakh people. We don't know. There's no way to tell. But it's clear that there is a very definite intention behind this. There is extreme vigor going behind this. There is extreme thought going behind this. There is a process in place which everybody seems to understand how to work, um, and what to do. And there is a direct line that they are following, right? So it's exactly, it's like a factory, it's a army. I'm now getting used to it. It still affects me. I'm not lying, because I just made a decision with people that I'm going to be off Twitter for like a few days, because it's getting extremely overwhelming now. Uh, and it's very vile. The language is very crass. It's very juvenile also. So like you do this smart story, you try to put some sense into the space, and because of these comments you feel like what was the point of this even, right? Plus you're constantly reminded that kuch hone nahi wala hai usko, right? Like you did this whole effort, you did this whole story, but kuch nahi hone wala, because you don't matter, right? Your stories don't matter, you don't matter. Kapil Mishra is obviously a powerful man, or the people in that group are obviously establishment people. So that is the kind of psyops that is being done on people, and including me, Shambhavi. even News Laundry, even our social media editors go crazy whenever something like this happens. They are also worried, what is going to happen. So yeah, editors, everyone. So it's not just me who gets trolled; it's my entire organization also which gets trolled. Because my past mistakes are thrown at their face, and then they're asked, "कि अरे इसको क्यों employ किया है?" So that happens. There is a lot of that. But of course, we talk inside, and we are obviously in solidarity with each other. We try to cope with it every time it happens. But yeah,
Yes.
I guess the healthy thing to do is keep off for a while then.
Yeah, and continue the work like you've been doing.
And they get
I
bored
think,
because they're extreme children, juvenile minded people who just get bored very easily. So they'll move on to someone else. So it's okay.
okay. I mean, it's sad that we're having to have this conversation.
Absolutely.
But really,
I feel
it's
terrible saying these things.
yeah. No, it's just a repeat or parallel of what's happening worldwide in this age of misinformation and information
Yeah.
overload. And I would say information warfare, really, except that
It is.
it's the people who are the victims of this warfare. And typically, it's done by powerful people, typically by governments and so on and so forth. And so we're all, as journalists also, but also as people, we're quite grateful that you were able to embed yourself into this and do this reporting. And I think I'll leave it at that for now, Meghnad. But for anybody watching this still now, this is an important story in the sense that it's juxtaposed at the same time when Disha Ravi is arrested for Toolkit, and this is itself is another kind of toolkit, and it's an indication of what's been going on for many years now. And we leave
And
it
that
at
is
that.
actually very interesting. Sorry, you
No,
mentioned
tell me
this
what you were saying.
because we started 2 months ago, right? And this whole toolkit happened right now, like last week, right?
Yes.
We thought that this was a good time to do the story because we then realized that what we were seeing was actually a toolkit as well, right? Because all this while we were thinking कि क्या करना है ये story में, like what are we seeing exactly, what are the steps that are happening, etc. Shambhavi was looking at it in real time. She was telling us what is happening in that group, and she was like, "Oh my God, this is what I saw. It was so traumatizing." But then this toolkit thing happened, and then it just clicked, right? In our head also it clicked that, hey, this is also a toolkit. This is also coordinated. This is also they're giving out dates about the calendar of our March, how they are going to do organized activities, how they are spreading misinformation, all of that. So it was very interesting how things also happened, right? Because the timing of this story was also important. Because if we released it today, it got that crazy because of the whole toolkit background behind it, right?
Yes.
Because the Delhi police is doing all this, right? And our story is being seen as a reaction to this, but we actually started work months ago. So I mean, it's always important to also understand how stories are timed as well to get like maximum attention as well. So I think there was an element of that also, which I would say worked out.
Yeah. We actually figured we are in our morning edit meet. We thought to ourselves that this is a good time, and you were already in this. The story needed to be done, and this is a good time
Yeah.
to do it. On that note, we'll close this conversation,
Yes.
Meghnad. But I hope you feel safe. Stay safe as well.
Thank you.
And stay off Twitter and all the social media for a while, so that you can get a little bit of peace.
And pay to keep news free, whoever is watching. Go to News
Yes,
Laundry.
please pay to
news free.
keep news free. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.